everybody. Today we're working on the old square gen Dodge. First gen, square body, first gen. This one be the 12 valve Cummins with the VE rotary pump. Today I guess we'll do kind of a walkthrough on how to get the pump off and back on one of these. A couple things you're going to need before you start. If you don't have an air hammer, get you one, because it'll help you get the fan off and that'll make life easier. And then the bottom nut that holds the injection pump on, you're going to need a wrench, some sort of shape like this, or even like an old style starter wrench that's just a curve. That's about the only way you're going to get the bottom nut off. So let's get in there and get the fan off and start getting stuff out of the way. Alright, this is the setup for getting this fan off. This fan's reverse thread, so it's going to be like you tighten it to loosen it. But if you try to just put a wrench on this nut and turn it, the motor's just going to turn, or the belt's going to slip, or however you want to say it. So you get on here with your air hammer, you come in at as steep an angle as you can, just like this, and when you hit it, to turn. Hang on a second. I can't hold the camera and do both. Here we go. We got her talking now. There. You see that? She's coming loose now. And there it is. Loose. Now on mine, it's just got these clips you pull off. You pop these clips off, pry them off the screwdriver. And the shroud will come out, and then we can unscrew the fan, and the fan will be out of our way. See, now that we got the shroud off and this upper radiator hose out of our way, you just tighten this to take it off, if that makes sense. Make sure you drop it and crash it right into the radiator core. No, don't do that. Be careful when you take this off. Now, if you haven't already, unhook the battery and get it out of the way. And now we can take the charger up pipe off of here. You know, if you get the right size socket. Now we can get this throttle bracketry off. Now this part, just, you know, carefully yank it off. These ends are plastic, so try not to break them. Get your throttle return spring. Get that off before it finds a way to disappear. Now we can get this bracket off that holds the throttle linkage. There's a nut there, and there's one hidden down under the pump, and there's another one back there, I think. That's pretty straightforward. When we get this off, I'll show you what it looks like, and then maybe we'll talk about the timing pin that's hidden under here, where you can't get to it. It'll probably break. Alright, we got the throttle bracket off. There's two nuts here, and a bolt there hidden. Now we got this other bracket that holds the back of the pump off, or up. There's a 10mm headed bolt hidden here. There's one down there behind the injection pump. You can get to those two. He's back in there. And you can get to those two from up here. Then you got to get underneath, and there's two more bolts in that bracket. One will come out, and one's almost directly behind your power steering pump stuff. That one you can just loosen with a wrench. And then this bracket right here will pivot down and out of the way. So I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, here's what that bracket looks like and does, you know, with the bolts out that'll come out, except for the one it's pivoting on that you just loosen. Now would be the time to get ready to do something. Now this is what they call the timing pin, down underneath the injection pump. It's way down under there and kind of hard to get to. Yours ain't gonna look like that. Mine looks like a bolt sticking out because, well, it got broke and somebody drilled it and tapped it and stuck a bolt in it. It's literally just plastic, and you're gonna want to be able to feel it. What you're supposed to do is turn the engine over while you apply pressure to that pin, pushing it that way, and it drops into a hole in the cam gear to set your timing at #1 top dead center compression. Now, if you go to push in on that or pull out on it and it acts like it's stuck or uncooperative, there's absolutely nothing holding it in its housing. Just work it all the way out, wiggle, 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 pull, twist, and try and get it out of there. And once you get it out, clean all the crud off of it and oil it up with something like STP and slide it in and out, you know, so it moves nice and easy. And then that way you'll be able to feel it when it drops into the hole, and you'll have everything lined up and you won't have to worry about putting your pump on out of time. So I guess that's what I'm going to do next, is turn the crankshaft, push on that, and get her on top dead center. And here we go, the timing pin. Looks like the end of mine's also busted off. So I guess we'll probably have to order a new timing pin before we can go any further on this little project. Alright, while we're waiting for that timing pin to show up, we can get in here and keep working. All the injector lines can come off. You have to take all these little clampy things loose and save all the pieces to them, because if you don't put them back on, all your injector lines will probably break eventually where the nut is. We've got 2 wires for the grid heater that comes out of the way. All those clampy things. Take the lines loose, get them off. We can get the feed line off and get the return line off. We can do everything except really take the bolts that hold the injection pump to the motor off. So we'll start with these injector lines here at the injector. And what you want to do is you want to get you a 17mm tubing wrench and bust them all loose. Once you get them all busted loose, then you can do the same thing over there on the pump. So let's do all the injector lines first at the injector, and then we'll go over here and talk a little bit about taking them off the pump, you know, after I get done with all 20 of these clampy things. Alright, now we're going to take the oil fill tube off, and that gets us down into the nut that holds the pump to the drive gear. The way this comes off is you just loosen this, just loosen it, because you got to use it for a lever to get this unscrewed. But it won't unscrew because it's too long, so once you get it loose, you got to take this off. Then you can unscrew this the rest of the way. There we go. Now we're going to get the injector lines the rest of the way off. We got all the injector lines loose off the injectors, and now I got all the clampy things taken loose. Be careful not to lose these plastic pieces out of them. Now we'll come around here and start doing injector lines. The way you're going to want to do this is you just get in here and take a tubing wrench and just get the easiest one to get to and take it loose. And then it might be underneath of one, but because we took the lines loose at the injector, even if it is underneath the one, you can usually get them wiggled out from in between each other. Now don't get rough with these and bend them, or you might not ever get them put back on where they go. And once you get them off, or take a piece of duct tape and wrap a piece of duct tape around them and write which cylinder they come from. Like this one's number 1, number 2, so on and so forth. So I'll get those injector lines off and we'll go from there. Alright, now we got the injection pump, or this injection pump drive nut off, and there's a washer in here behind that nut. And you sure don't want to drop that down in there, because then you'll be taking the timing cover off for sure. So fish that out of there with a magnet. This is probably the most aggravating part of this whole endeavor here. This is our reman pump, and this is the bottom hole, and this is what takes some sort of special wrench to get in there. And as you can see, the problem is you can't get on there with the U-joint because of everything in the way. You'd never get on there with a straight wrench, so you just have to get in here with this and stick it up in there and feel around and try and get it on there, and just a little at a time. Now this one comes out right easy with just a regular wrench, and this one down in here you can, once you get the bottom one out, I suggest starting with the bottom bolt, take it all the way out, get on this one with a regular wrench and loosen it up until the pump starts moving a little. Then once the pump starts moving a little, because the bolts are loose, you can come in and get the one down in there with like a long extension in a socket, 13 millimeter. So we'll get these bolts out, and then I'll show you what you got to do up here on front, because this is a keyed shaft and it's tapered, so it'll fit tight. So I'll show you how to get that out next. The bolts to hold the injection pump in, got them all out, so this is loose, so we can press the pump out of the drive gear now. The way you do that is you can go to the internet and get you a puller made just for Cummins, or you can do what I did is, this is a steering wheel puller I bought years ago that's been handy for a lot of things, and I just went and got some 8mm by I believe it's 1.25 thread pitch bolts. Yeah, 8 by 1.25, and that's what screws into the drive gear for the pump. So we'll just screw these into the pump and tighten her up, and it'll go pop, and then we'll have the pump off. Now we should just be able to tighten this up, and pump pops right off. Yep, it didn't even make a noise. It was not very tight, evidently. Anyway, come on, little guy. Oh, and there we go. Now make sure when you get this out, you didn't lose the key. Sliding this reman pump in is just like sliding that pump out. Be super careful not to drop the key in the motor. And then the most important thing is see this? See that? And then look over here. See that thing over here? Do they look different? They do look different, huh? This pump, I didn't lock it in place before I pulled it out of the engine, because we had the timing pin in. We knew we were at number 1 top dead center. When you get a reman pump, see how that plate's not there? Look, they sent you the plate in this bag. And after you get the pump put in, this, if you try to turn it, is slightly springy because you're turning a piston in a pump, so it wants to kind of like turning an engine. So they lock it in place so you don't get it out of time. So once you get the pump bolted in and then this nut put on and everything where you want it, then you have to take this bolt out and put this in like that and bolt it in. So if you try to start the engine with this block in, you'll probably break or wreck or ruin something, and you'll be doing this again. So I'm going to get this pump slid back in and everything lined up, and I guess anything of note going back together that might make your life easier, I'll try to tell you. Okay, it's time to put the injector lines back on. So what you want to do is you want to start with the one that's the farthest that way, the hardest to get to when they're all on, and start with it. Now find yourself a nice injector chart to show you, you know, which one of these is which cylinder. So it looks like I'm going to start with number 3. So I grabbed the number 3 injector line, and remember, you get the gray tape and you mark which one goes where. You just want to lightly start the nut on the injector, and then this will hang down here real nice, and it just kind of goes where it's supposed to. Get a chart and make sure, and you're just going to go ahead and start that. Now you can go ahead and tighten them on the pump, but leave them loose up here on the injectors, because some of these where number 3 goes on now, well, I think number 3 is in the middle of the bundle that goes through those valve covers. So by the time we get done, we'll have to lift that up off the injector so we can get the number 1 injection line on. So proceed that way. Just work your way around the pump, going from here to here to here. You know, go from the farthest back and the hardest to get to all the way around until you get them on. The injector lines are all back on, and they're tight here up on the pump. Now up here on the injectors, they're all still loose, and you're going to want to leave them loose. Now that you got the injector lines back on and they're tight on the pump, there's a primer pump down here. It's a little lever on the fuel pump. You want to push that down and start pumping it fuel into the injection pump. Now my engine was of course pinned on top dead center with the pin. Now with it on top dead center, the lobe for the cam that runs the fuel pump was up on the fuel pump, so I had to turn the engine 180 degrees to get the primer pump to work. Now this here, this banjo fitting, this is the fuel return. You want to leave this loose or loosen it, make sure it's loose so it'll leak. You want to pump on that primer lever until you get fuel here, and then once you get fuel here, go ahead and tighten this up and then pump on that some more. Pump on it a lot till it maybe feels like you get some pressure, and then we'll move on to the next step. Well, I pumped on it until fuel came out the return. I tightened this up and pumped on the little lever down there some more, and it just kind of feels like it quits pumping. So it's real important to have this open so the air can come through, because that pump won't pump hardly any pressure to speak of by your hands, with the little lever. So we got the injector lines tied here, everything fastened down. Put the battery back in. I put the radiator hose on, but the fan's still off, and the oil fill tube's still off, and all these brackets and stuff is still off. And over here on the injector lines, they're all loose. We're going to prime this thing and see if it'll run before we put it all the way back together, because I got burned by a reman pump already. So this is, you know, number 2. So we're going to make sure this will run before we put it all the way back together. Now I'll set you guys up here and you guys can watch. When we start seeing fuel coming out there, then holler, because we'll close these lines off, and then that means we got fuel to the injectors and it should start run. Was you guys watching? How many sprayed fuel? All 6 or just 1 or 2? Now we'll tighten those injector nuts up and see if it'll run. Injector nuts are tightened. Let's see if we can get this thing to run. So I guess it runs. I guess we can put this all the way back together now. Well, I think we'll end the video here. This should pretty well walk you through, you know, all the stuff you got to do. We got the injector clamp lines on the clamps to put back on, the charge tube, the fan, the shroud, and some brackets. So That stuff all goes back on the way it come off. Make sure to put all those clampy things back on the injector lines, or somewhere down the road you'll be having leaking injector lines. So good luck with your project.